Hey everybody. So what you're seeing right now is one of the earliest PC Minecraft worlds of mine that I've been able to dig up. I found it stored away on an old SanDisk drive, a backup of an unfortunate laptop that was obliterated via a massive cup of water circa 2017. Whenever I boot up a world like this, it usually takes me a minute, but I'll eventually start to dredge up memories of what exactly it was I was using it for. This one, if memory serves, was a test of features from the 1.7 snapshot, created sometime in late 2013 when I was still in elementary school. The mobs, assorted redstone junk, massive craters, and general desolation was a common thread among my worlds at the time, considering I'd often just boot them up on afternoons after school to show my friends. But there are some worlds here that I can immediately recognize, since this was around the time I started really creating worlds with a purpose. I can remember this, and pretty fondly at that. But there are things I don't remember. These are my oldest worlds in the Java edition of the game, what used to just be called Minecraft. But they're not my oldest worlds, period. Here we have my iPod from 2012, Game Boy case that I bought off Amazon included, which miraculously still works. Alongside a game of Jetpack Joyride that's been paused for 9 years, I can find on this device my unbelievably out-of-date copy of Minecraft Pocket Edition, which houses worlds a full year and a half or so older than anything on my computer. As you might be able to tell, however, the iPod is small and pathetic, and the app crashes every 30 seconds, so I had to get a little creative. Here we have Minecraft Pocket Edition running on my laptop, with world files imported from my iPod, which miraculously can still interface with a version of macOS about 10 years newer. Now, these worlds are something unique. You see, I don't remember any of this. These worlds are bizarre and seemingly pointless at certain times. What was the purpose of the cake structure in this farm? What the hell is this thing? Why did I build a massive sign that just says Minecraft? The answer to most of these questions is simply, I don't know. I don't remember. But I don't have to, because Minecraft has graciously done it for me. You see, I believe that Minecraft, as a game, stands out quite a bit in this regard, partly due to its individual design, partly due to the community and history surrounding it. Minecraft is a game deeply suffused in memory, a reminiscence-soaked digital record that holds an imprint far longer than you may intend or even care to imagine. So tonight, in this particularly meandering but hopefully meaningful journey, let's discuss the ways in which Minecraft remembers you. As people, we forget things. We leave things behind. It's simply in our nature to move on. The life of any one individual could, in a way, be represented by the entire body of artifacts they leave behind, and the study of said artifacts is one of the core pillars of archaeology. By studying the forgotten belongings and trails of individuals 10, 100, 1,000 years gone, we can reconstruct their activities, their beliefs, who they were as a person. This is one of the most significant ways in which we can learn from the past. But when dealing with individuals in the very distant past, information can be sparse. The very first recorded name of a human being, Kushim, only dates back to around 3400 BC at the earliest. Assuming the name wasn't a title, Kushim is believed to have been an accountant or agricultural administrator in ancient Sumer. The name can be found on numerous clay tablets detailing exchanges of grain in Sumer, and it predates mentions of Eri Hor, a pre-dynastic Egyptian pharaoh who previously held the record. All non-mythical humans who lived before this point, in our entire breadth of knowledge, have no recorded names. Any who lived before the advent of written language are known if and only if physical evidence of them is discovered. Compare this to our modern era, in which almost all human beings born within the last century or so are known at least by name in some record somewhere. The closer an individual lies to the current day, the more information we're likely to know about him. This is largely due to the fact that as our technologies become more sophisticated, it becomes more feasible for an individual to leave a trail behind. With systems of writing came the ability to preserve written history. With the spread of literacy came the ability for individuals to leave accounts of their daily lives. With the advent of photography came the ability to visually capture individual moments for all time. But in almost no other way is this exemplified as much as with the World Wide Web. Springer Nature's 11,000-page Encyclopedia of Global Archaeology now features a section devoted specifically to the archaeology of the internet, and for very good reason. Never in the history of humanity has it been so damn easy for an individual human to leave an imprint of themselves to be preserved into the future. When the internet first began to coalesce from smaller regional networks in the 1960s and 70s, its purposes were entirely martial and academic. But after the World Wide Web was overlaid onto it in 1989, and following the rapid explosion of commercial ISPs circa 1993, the internet and the services it provides quickly began their inevitable creep into day-to-day life. This is the nature of the digital era, with so much of life being driven by the creation of accounts, the uploading of information to far-off servers, and the sending of digital messages, which are of course archived. It's inevitable that even the most tech-adverse will leave something behind on some piece of computer memory somewhere, even if it is just a name. It happens even if you're not entirely aware of it. From where we stand here deep within the information age, we leave bits and pieces of ourselves behind, whether we want to or not. But that's enough of that, for now at least. As many of you may be asking, what the hell does any of this have to do with Minecraft? Well, what if I told you that Minecraft is one of the most remarkable, but simultaneously one of the most unrecognized, ways in which these digital imprints can be stored? Now, if you've been around the channel for any reasonable length of time, you'll know this has been a fixation of mine for years at this point. I've skirted the edge of this topic a number of times in the past few years. I've talked about the history of Minecraft maps, chronometric dating using Minecraft World Gen, the uncertain state of Minecraft worlds and maps in present day, and of course the formation of a weird proto-society on everyone's favorite server, 2b2t. If you haven't already guessed, this strange topic lies at the intersection of two things I'm either interested in or that have played a major role in my life. Minecraft, the game, along with history / archivism / obscure things in general. And upwards of a decade of experience with these two fields has led me to one simple realization. Minecraft, well, it remembers you. It keeps a record of the things you do, with ramifications you might not be aware of. Like the clay tablet impressed with Kushim's name, it holds, if only incidentally, an impression of an individual, their life, their actions, within the confines of a world file. The game allows players to project things onto it, whether they intend to or not, through the use of its extremely moldable sandbox environment, and over time this causes any individual world to become a reflection of the player who dwelled in it. Or players. The game is, of course, the best-selling in history, and it has definite community aspects to it that promote the sharing of user-generated content and collaborative work. To make a long story short, which may be a moot point by now, Minecraft is a game that can be molded in any way the player sees fit, and one that encourages said player to make these changes and share them with others. In this way, and due to the almost universal nature of the game by this point, Minecraft has become, in a sense, a shared medium through which people in the vicinity of my generation can leave memories and experiences behind and potentially share them with others, to be remembered for all time, even after the individual may not quite remember it themselves. Now, with all this abstract stuff being said, let's talk about worlds. Minecraft worlds, or maps, whichever you want to call them, are something I've always had a fascination with. Very long-term viewers may remember the History of Minecraft Maps, a video I produced in 2020 with the goal of documenting how maps had evolved and changed, both influencing and being influenced by the growing Minecraft community. I believed then, as I continue to believe now, that a Minecraft world can act as a snapshot of not just the players that took part in them, but also the state of the community at the time and even the state of the game itself. Exploring signs and structures, world names and creation dates, you can determine what players played on a world and when. You can examine builds and items to get a read on how that world was played or what techniques and trends were popular at that time. Hell, thanks to the major changes that have occurred to the world gen engine throughout alpha, beta, and multiple times during the full release period of the game, you can even look back at the natural world generation itself to get an idea of what it was like to boot up a fresh world back in the day. With this in mind, one particular interest I had going into that video was to find the original Minecraft map. If it's true that Minecraft worlds can hold historical remnants of the game, the community, and the players who use them, what can I learn from the very first custom Minecraft world to ever be publicly shared? Well, this pursuit was difficult and ended up being somewhat disappointing. I began on abandoned map sharing sites before moving to Planet Minecraft and eventually Minecraft Forum looking for the map, and after a huge amount of exploration stumbled upon this. On June 30th, 2009, user PuyoDead created a post entitled Half Flatgrass, Half Ocean Map. Within the post was a Mediafire link, which of course had been dead for years, but assumedly it had once linked to a download for what I believe was the oldest publicly shared Minecraft map in the history of the game. But obtaining the map was another story entirely. I reached out to what I believed was one of PuyoDead's current accounts but received no information, and after trying for over a week, 2020 me gave up and uploaded the video with the mystery remaining unsolved. But sometimes things work out in a funny sort of way. In September of 2021, I began work on another Minecraft-related video. This one instead focused on the way in which Minecraft worlds become lost over time. During production, I was browsing through a classic world archive that had been shared with me by its creator, a user named JAYC, who it seems has since gone inactive, to find worlds that I could record B-roll on. And what should I stumble upon but a compressed world file entitled server_level 2009. Out of curiosity, I downloaded it, and there it was. The map I'd made a huge fuss over a year prior, the map I'd believed could be the genesis of the Minecraft map phenomenon, was just sitting in this archive the entire time. And the funniest part was, it was already there when I was working on the 2020 video. I just didn't have access to the archive yet. Even an incredibly simplistic map like this can tell us something about its creators and origins, the types of maps players were interested in sharing and downloading, the block types available to players, of which Bedrock was apparently very popular for server worlds. With a map like this, no matter how bare bones, you can retrace the steps of players who booted up the game in a time when a flatgrass map was something genuinely astounding. And we can experience this with so many more worlds than this. There are, without a doubt, tens if not hundreds of millions or even billions of Minecraft worlds currently in existence. And a not inconsiderable portion of them are sitting in archives just like JAYC's, or like this one, maintained by a user named Leonard Richardson. Countless more are likely still in existence on hard drives and external storage devices sitting in dusty boxes, possibly owned by players who don't even play the game anymore, let alone remember the worlds they created. Most maps fall into this category of individual scale remains. Those worlds that were only frequented by single players, were never meant to be spread, but may have made their way online by some stroke of fate. I discovered a 10-year-old world file on my hard drive entitled Minecraft Survival K&J that, when booted up, instantly brought back memories of a friend and I sitting around my single computer trying to record ourselves surviving our first night. You can do this with the worlds of other players as well, provided you're lucky enough to get your hands on some. Playing through these worlds is like conducting digital archaeology as you walk through castles and railways and mines that are, in Minecraft terms, truly ancient. If you're lucky, you might find a sign or two indicating the names of players who walked the same paths as you many years ago. It's incredibly fascinating to try to piece together the story of a world's players from the remnants they've left behind and likely entirely forgotten about. This strange style of historical reconstruction can be helped along if you have an understanding of the game's culture from around the time a world was created. My favorite example of this will always be the matter of mossy cobblestone. We don't really give this block a second thought today, but up until release 1.8 in September of 2014, mossy cobblestone wasn't craftable, rendering it a non-renewable resource unless duped. The block could only be found in the rare dungeon structure prior to 1.3.1, and after that in jungle temples as well. This unintentional scarcity led to mossy cobblestone being seen by many very early players as a rare or even luxury item. On some older survival worlds where players were particularly well off, you might see structures made entirely out of mossy cobblestone, intended to be an indication of wealth, as strange as that may seem now. When exploring a well-worn and sufficiently old world, chances are you'll come across vestigial features like this: minecart boosters, slab stairs, strictly vertical logs, and so on. These not only give us an insight into the time period in which a world was lived in, but also a glimpse into the thoughts of players who lived in them. Whether the worlds are your own or someone else's, the living memory they represent is tangible. This can also happen on a collective scale. Maps can be created for the sole purpose of group collaboration or sharing. Now, many very early Minecraft maps were shared on defunct forums, 4chan threads, or small group chats on Skype and such, and as a result they fall into the former category even if that wasn't the original intent. But very early on, the community began to develop hubs for these communal worlds to be preserved for extended periods of time. Minecraft Forum went live in 2009, only a month after the game's inception. Planet Minecraft was founded in mid to late 2010, and an entire rogues gallery of map hosting sites like minecraftmaps.com emerged in the following few years. Adventure and challenge maps from their very inception provided an entirely new way of preserving memories. Unlike personal worlds, these were worlds specifically engineered to be played again and again by countless players. You could play them with friends, but even if you played alone, you played alone together. You could download a map and play through it, experiencing its storyline or unique gameplay challenges, then send the map to a friend and have them play through it too. When Captain Sparkles uploaded his, at the time, trailblazing playthrough of Escapecraft 2, Google search interest in the map skyrocketed. The thread listing the map on Minecraft Forum would go on to accumulate over 21 pages and likely hundreds of thousands of downloads. Players could install the map and walk the same routes as their favorite YouTuber, seeing everything, this time, with their own eyes. Minecraft worlds now couldn't just hold individual memories, emblazoned into the blocks and signs and entities of any given world. They could hold community memories, shared cultural experiences spanning thousands or even millions of individuals. Ask anybody who is active in the game around this time about Skyblock, Cops and Robbers, The Dropper, the original Broville City, or anything of that sort, and chances are it'll bring back recollections of what was going on in their lives at the time they played it. Everyone has their own memories of maps like this, and chances are they might just have their own old copy of it sitting on a hard drive somewhere, with reminders of their time spent in the world carved away into the grass and stone. My original copy of Herobrine's Mansion, for example, has the entire introductory pathway covered in cake, and the mansion itself is utterly blown to shit, presumably because I decided to go into creative after beating the map and just sort of went off. That exact moment in my life from close to 10 years ago has been preserved, frozen as an unchanging stream of bits until I decided one day to dig it back up. Who knows, you might have a completely different experience with this exact same map, but that's the beauty of it. These memories are, in a way, shared, but in another, entirely and utterly unique. But of course, this is only one aspect of the matter. Servers are something else entirely. Exploring a server world has always been, in my opinion, an endlessly interesting pursuit. In a way, it's very similar to the small-scale world exploration mentioned before. The stories and memories of a world are told through the acts of creation, destruction, and alteration that players on the server have enacted throughout the years. But a server world is a living, changing thing. You can follow the trails of torches players have placed down and rummage through the possibly grief-protected houses and fortresses built in the preceding months and years. But a month later, that might all be different. A server world is less of a freeze-frame sample of a server's community and collective history at a given time, and more of a journal constantly being added to as time goes on. Signs really come into play here. They're the single best way to discover what players have been where and why. When a player puts a sign down stating that they used a food stop in January of 2015, they're unknowingly adding to the organically built story of that server world. Quite possibly the best known example of this phenomenon is the world of the server 2B2T, something I've discussed at length in the past. To make an incredibly long story short, 2B2T is an anarchy server that's been running for over 13 years at this point, and in that time it's slowly built up a world file multiple terabytes in size, thanks to the constant interaction and activity of players. 2B's world and the worlds of similarly old servers like Minecraft Online are, in all honesty, the greatest example of this phenomenon. To explore a map like this is to walk back through history and experience firsthand the actions of thousands of players over a massive timescale as far as Minecraft worlds go, slowly painting a picture from what we can find. On this 100k world download of the 2B map, we can see a simple lava cast just a little bit outside spawn that, when dug into a little, reveals an almost entirely intact sandstone tower. The tower is built of cut sandstone, meaning it was built after 1.2.4 in March 2012, but the land it's built on is much older. Based on water levels nearby, I'd wager this is a pre-beta 1.8 chunk of terrain, predating the tower by around a year at the very least. Someone generated this chunk, someone else built the tower years later, and yet another player then decided to lava cast it, as is tradition. And this is just in the world download that I have, which is itself a few years old. I ventured back into the present day spawn of 2B2T, and upon dodging massive amounts of withers and a warden somehow, I discovered that the tower, or at least what used to be the tower, is completely unrecognizable. Gone is the somewhat identifiable landscape that was visible around it circa 2018, and in its place is a desolate maze of lava casts and treacherous paths. But upon looking around further, I discovered it wasn't quite gone. A few scattered blocks of the original sandstone foundation floated here and there, with the tower's top floor still slightly intact, inhabited only by mobs that make their home in the unending darkness of spawn. Even after all this time, this mess of rubble still tells a compelling story that was no doubt guided by countless players over many years. On servers with more strict grief protection, the story told might be a little more cohesive. Minecraft Online is one of the few still running servers older than 2B2T, and unlike 2B, it's enforced a hardline no griefing policy since day one. Players have been building on the server since 2010, and in that time, almost nothing has been destroyed. Because of this, we can see much more well-preserved examples of old player activity. New players can follow paths that were almost identical to when they were originally constructed over 10 years prior, watching the buildings slowly grow more and more modern the further they travel from spawn. 1.12 blocks take form atop beta terrain, and very obviously old-school builds, rife with cobblestone, walls of torches, slab stairs, and colored wool, coexist with decidedly modern ones. In this peculiar little valley, we can find what is, in Minecraft terms, an ancient relic. A simple 3-story wooden house constructed upwards of 12 years ago by a user who last logged on in 2011. I shit you not, this house is older than millions of current Minecraft players. It's likely been visited by thousands, if not tens of thousands of people since it was first built. And just up the hill from it, almost visible from the roof, is a modern mansion built with stairs, slabs, wood variants, stained glass, and all the modern comforts available in 1.12. To visit a server world like this is not just to step back in time, but to see the past merged with the present, to varying degrees of success. However, these are both major public servers, and most that you'll find while attempting to do this sort of archaeology will be of the same kind. What about servers that are still online, but have fallen completely silent in terms of player activity? Worlds that have remained open for players to join, but have remained untouched for years. I'm talking, of course, about the fabled dead servers. Now, finding a dead server is easier said than done. Server hosting costs time, power, and money, and if a server operator finds that no one is visiting anymore, there's really no reason for them to keep the server running. Almost by definition, a dead server isn't long for this world. Furthermore, a server that's inactive or not maintained isn't likely to have a large presence online, so finding one that's simultaneously publicly advertised, still running, and also entirely dead is a bit of a tough job. But there are a few. Looking through the post-1000 pages on Minecraft server listing sites, we can see a small handful of listings that fit the bill, like this one, the Superflat experiment. The point of this server, from what I've read, was to see just how well an anarchy server could flourish on a superflat world. It's a pretty interesting concept, and it saw some attention, at least for a while, as the spattering of craters and lava casts dotting the land can attest to, destructive remnants of players who likely haven't been on in months. But most other servers in this category more closely resemble this one, simply entitled BSCABL's Minecraft World. Small but lovingly crafted spawns surrounded by almost completely unspoiled wilderness. Simple, abandoned settlements dot the land, few and far between, and almost certainly no longer maintained. Yet even these worlds tell stories. Of the hopes and dreams held by the server operators, of the ambitions of the players who logged onto these brand new worlds that they would eventually abandon. Maybe when these servers eventually do go dark, their world files will be saved, but then again, maybe not. And if this does happen, whether they remain private or end up being shared online amongst other users is anyone's guess. Now, there is another method, one we haven't yet discussed. But to understand how exactly it works, you have to understand the internet. Now, what we commonly refer to as the internet is actually the World Wide Web, a system for accessing and distributing information over the application layer HTTP protocol and its derivatives. The actual internet is a layer below the web, and it's a lot older. It's all of the physical machines connected to each other through the global network, along with the connections between them, and it operates primarily through the use of the TCP/IP protocol stack, which allows any given machine within the internet to communicate arbitrarily with any other machine. Without going into any of the more complex details, IP governs machine-to-machine transmissions, i.e. my computer to yours, using IP addresses, while TCP governs process-to-process transmissions, i.e. a chat client on my computer to a chat client on yours, using what are called TCP ports. HTTP, for instance, uses TCP port 80. Any given machine can be connected to on any port in the 16-bit range, but the vast majority of the time, its web server will only be listening on port 80. So, with that all being said, what the hell does any of this have to do with Minecraft? Well, Minecraft servers have a dedicated port number of their own. TCP port 25565 was chosen many years ago to be the default location for Minecraft servers to reside. It's that high because all the lower numbers have already been claimed by unimportant stuff like DHCP and BGP and so on. Anyway, this means that if any given machine happens to be hosting a Minecraft server, a TCP connection made on port 25565 will permit a connection to said server as long as there isn't a whitelist. If you get lucky, you might just be able to find an abandoned server sitting around somewhere, even if it's no longer listed on any indexes. Or you can just do what I did and use Shodan to find them. Shodan is a service that periodically crawls a massive portion of the internet, searching for active ports such as this. It also has a huge variety of filtering methods that allow you to scrub through these millions of potential hits to find exactly what you're looking for, namely computers advertising an open port 25565. And if we do this, we can find many more servers that weren't originally available. Now, to be clear, this isn't your go-ahead to join random people's Minecraft servers. Besides for the fact that the vast majority of private servers are going to be whitelisted, it's also just an invasion of privacy. So while doing the exploring for this video, I tried my hardest to focus on servers that looked like they had at one point been something publicly accessible, worlds that looked to have had some kind of history, but had been completely abandoned by their players and their owners. And I made sure that they remained this way for several months before actually exploring them. And what I found was very interesting. Unlike publicly advertised servers, which overwhelmingly run 1.19 and 1.20 at the time of writing, these dead servers run the gamut of versions. Most I found at first ran 1.19, but as I looked further I discovered servers running versions all the way back through and including 1.9, with the quantities of servers generally decreasing the further back you go. That being said, let's work our way back through the versions. This 1.20 server is completely and utterly untouched. It was presumably created for some purpose, but what that purpose was is entirely impossible to know. Unfortunately, many are like this, particularly in newer versions. This server features a similarly untouched landscape, with a notable exception. 2 signs left behind by a user likely using the same technique as me, advertising an anarchy server called Anarchy Forever. Who exactly they're advertising to is anyone's guess, but as long as this server remains online, they'll remain as well. This 1.19 server featured only this charming town that looks to have been at some unknown point in the past, griefed by some users who happened upon it. And it seems like in the time since, no one's been on to fix it. One 1.18 server I discovered seems to have been resurrected in the time since I found it, which is always nice to see, so I left that one well enough alone. This 1.11 server features a server hub and a survival world perpetually under construction, a lone spawn surrounded by miles and miles of emptiness. This one is particularly interesting because of its sophistication. There's an impressive amount of infrastructure here for what seems to be a full server network. It would just seem, for all intents and purposes, to be entirely empty. The creative subserver is the only one with notable past player activity. It's a classic plot-style creative build world, with some mansions, apartments, hotels, a big-ass igloo, and a few other indecipherable structures being the only evidence that, at some point in the past, the server saw life. This other server on the same version hosted the most built-up survival world yet, with a surprising number of structures scattered throughout the spawn region, although I couldn't quite determine which were part of the original spawn. This server, similarly to the 1.19 server discovered earlier, had been griefed by unknown players sometime before my joining, and it's entirely possible that it was these players who left behind this, a sign advertising a player who had visited in October of last year and their Instagram handle. Why players seem to have taken to this strategy of advertising on these obscure and likely dead servers is anyone's guess. This next 1.10 world tells a similar story. Small but well-established spawn region with scattered builds both near and far. This one has its own little suspended rail system, which is always nice. I think of all the dead servers I've explored while researching for this video, this one best captures the feeling these worlds give me. As overplayed and cliche as the phrase is now, I think some of the locations on this server could be described as liminal spaces. There's something so lonely about the railways without minecarts, the empty chests, the labeled buildings that clearly had thought put into them at some point in the past. These servers running on older versions are always a bit ambiguous when it comes to timing. Has this server actually been running for the past 7 years, or does the owner just keep it in an outmoded version for their own reasons? There's really no way to know how long the snow-buffeted spires of this server have been sitting there alone in the night. Oh, and this server also has another advertising sign, this time for someone's Discord. You know, in a way, these are kind of charming. They're like little reminders that I'm not the only one embarking on this journey, and it has a way of uniting me and these other wayward travelers, if only for a moment, as we continue to explore. This server on the same version is much of the same, if a little bit messier. Griefers have gotten to this one as well. You can really feel that this world was alive at one point. Chests are full of junk, totally unorganized. Bridges over the ocean are covered with way too many torches. I get the feeling this was a server that people had a lot of fun on at some point. And interestingly, on a more technical note, this world is actually a lot older than the version it's hosted on. Based on upper bound features like the absence of stone variants in caves and the lack of large flowers in plains biomes, and lower bound features like sea level, I estimate the world was created sometime in or around 2013, 3 years before 1.10. This, of course, opens up more questions, like why was this server updated through multiple versions before being inexplicably abandoned, but at this point there's really no way for us to know. This is one of the most outdated but still online dead servers I was able to find, running version 1.9.4, almost 8 years old at the time of writing. And weirdly, this is also one of the most undisturbed. The only evidence that players have been on the server at all are a few scattered blocks around spawn and, of course, 2 signs placed by one of our friends from a previous server. This world really is a mystery, at least to me. It was either created 8 years ago then left completely untouched but somehow still online for all that time, or created more recently in a decidedly outdated version and then immediately abandoned. I'm not really sure which is weirder. Now, there do exist a few servers running 1.8, but I'm decidedly less certain about these being abandoned, simply due to the fact that a lot of players still run this version due to combat changes introduced in 1.9. And below 1.8, there is a whole lot of nothing. I suppose the reason I find servers in particular so interesting when exploring the history of Minecraft worlds is that they have all the mystery and memory of individual worlds and shared adventure maps, but none of the fixedness. A saved map from 10 years ago is like a photograph, perfectly preserved but unchanging. You can track the paths players walked, stalk the great empty halls they've built like some digital phantom, examine every last block they've placed down, but you know that they'll never return to place down another. Servers aren't like this. Even if a server is entirely dead, there's always a tiny chance that one day, out of the blue, the player that placed that block down 6 years ago might rejoin to pick it back up again. It's an ongoing history, not a static one. When I encountered this desert fishing shack from 2018 on 2B2T and rebuilt it to fish for gear, I became part of its history. In a few months, when someone comes across the shack and inevitably blows it to pieces, they'll become part of it as well, and my part in the story will become a memory. But the problem with memories is, well, sometimes we forget. I initially scrubbed through Shodan to find those abandoned servers and added them to my server list around August and September of 2023. Because of life events, I wasn't able to actually explore them all thoroughly until January of 2024. Once I finally got around to doing this though, only 7 of the 15 servers I'd initially found were still online. I wish I'd thought to take screenshots or recordings at the time, but at this point it's too late. Over half of these server worlds are now permanently down, and highly unlikely to ever return. And that's not the end of it. Remember that flatgrass ocean map I found by Puyo Dead? Well, as stated in my Lost Worlds video, almost immediately after finding it, I was surprised to discover that what I had pegged as the oldest public Minecraft world for over a year was actually nothing of the sort. I discovered a handful of older Minecraft forum threads that weren't located in the maps category, and many of these threads contained worlds that were indeed older than Puyo Dead's, if only by a couple of weeks. On June 16th of 2009, just around a month after Notch began development on the game for the first time, an MCF user named Hey5000 shared a flatgrass map in response to a request for one. As far as I could tell, unless there existed some hidden upload stashed away on some obscure site, this truly was the oldest Minecraft world that still existed on the internet. Except it didn't. Just like in the case of Puyo Dead, Hey5000's map was only accessible through a Mediafire link that had probably been dead for a decade. And unlike in the case of Puyo Dead, even though the map was only 2 weeks older, it seems unlikely it will ever be found again. Hell, remember those old worlds I was able to dig up off my iPod? Those weren't quite my oldest worlds either. My actual oldest worlds reside on this, my shitty 2011 Kindle Fire, the very first electronic device with a screen I ever got. Unfortunately, the Fire seems to have been bricked at some unknown point in the past. At this moment, it can't boot past the splash screen, and until I figure out a way to get past this, if I ever do, the single oldest Minecraft world I ever created, along with my first 100 or so builds, will remain completely lost. There do exist small fragments of a few of these worlds on my iPod. Old Pocket Edition versions had this weird bug with server worlds where if you joined someone on LAN, which was the only option at that point, you could sometimes download their world onto your device if the host disconnected before you. Sometimes it was just fragments, one of which can be seen on this otherwise unremarkable world I had saved on the iPod. This is a portion of an arena that I built using hacked items from a third-party editor and hosted an uncountable number of PvP fights in with my friends. But now, this small chunk of it is all I really have. Now, this isn't the first time I've touched on this subject. I was first exposed to it while working on Minecraft's Lost Worlds, a video that's over 2 years old by this point. While researching, I very quickly discovered that, like the proverbial iceberg, the vast majority of every Minecraft map ever made are no longer accessible. They've fallen below the surface, so to speak. The only worlds that survive the winds of change for any reasonable amount of time are the very popular, or those that just get lucky and end up preserved somewhere more resistant to change, like an archive. Be they server worlds that end up deleted when a forgotten server goes down, personal worlds that wind up on dusty hard drives in a box somewhere without ever seeing the light of day, or adventure maps and community projects that become neglected and eventually suffer deletion thanks to the ongoing entropy of the web. Almost every Minecraft world ever made will eventually be lost. Like I said earlier, I've discussed this at length before, so I won't get into it as much here, but this is primarily due to two major factors. The first is technical. For a good part of their existence and popularity, the various versions of Minecraft have existed in some state of in development. Hell, there was even an entire development cycle named after it. The world save format for Java Edition alone has evolved and changed considerably. At varying points, they've been saved as proprietary files with .mc level and .mine extensions, folders containing a level.dat and a genuinely fucking unbelievable amount of region files, and there was also that one really short period in InDev where you just couldn't save worlds at all. Certain thresholds along this development process are pretty much impassable as far as conversion goes. You can't really convert an InDev world to an InfDev one, for instance. This essentially locks a large number of worlds in older versions, which are, thanks in part to the actions of Mojang, either difficult or entirely impossible to access through official means. A user might one day remember their old worlds, but be unable to play through them, and as such will simply move on from them entirely. In addition, as is the case with lost media and media in general, things just have a tendency to get lost. Server hosting sites go down, downloads expire, and old data gets corrupted. I've experienced a huge amount of this myself, and my worlds aren't even that old comparatively. The other factor in losing worlds is a lot simpler, and it's another that I've mentioned in the past. People just don't think too much of any given world they might have. With the exception of people who have a vested interest in archiving, your average person is probably gonna leave their world for the last time and not really care what happens to it after that point. In fact, if you happen to still be watching this, you might just be wondering why this matters at all. If there's been one message I've been trying to impart on you, it's that a Minecraft world holds memories in a way unlike almost anything else, and that these memories are worth remembering. Every last place of a block, every book written and sign placed down, every structure, whether intact or completely demolished, was the impact of someone, somewhere, maybe even yourself. And to see them in game is to see the history and experiences they hold in intimate detail. It sounds silly, I know. But genuinely, who's to say that a Minecraft world, a clean slate marked over time by the actions of human beings like you and me, is any worse of a memento than a written document, an audio recording, a photograph? In many ways, it's a new breed of medium entirely, because it not only allows you to view a snapshot of a state of being at a given time, but also step into and interact with it in the same manner as those who originally created it. A photo of a time in your life you fondly remember serves to preserve that moment. You can always look back at it and be thrust back into that time if only for a moment. With a Minecraft world saved and last played during a time you look back on warmly, you aren't just afforded the ability to passively observe. You can boot up the world and walk the same routes you did all those years ago. You can enter the houses of friends who might have joined, dig through chests and recall every last item you placed into them. And even if you feel like it, just start playing on that world again. You can pick this memory up right where you left it off and continue the story as if nothing had ever happened. Server worlds are arguably more important. They aren't just the memories of a single individual, they're collective histories. People on them don't exist in a vacuum. They interact with each other, modifying or destroying others' builds, working together on large-scale projects, making and breaking allegiances as time goes on. These sometimes incredibly massive worlds showcase something greater than the sum of their parts, an unorthodox but in-depth record of not just a collection of people, but the relationships and interactions between them. These can be observed in much the same way that real-world anthropologists and historians study the interactions between individuals within one culture, between one culture and another, or even between one time period and the next. And if any given server world happens to still be actively running, you yourself can become part of this living record just by joining. Even adventure maps and custom worlds, which don't necessarily fall under any of these classifications, are still able to act as vessels for history and memories. They store these not as tangible digital remnants left behind on individual worlds, but as the immaterial cultural connections they help to form. The collective experiences of an entire generation, of every kid who grew up playing on the original survival games map. Even these worlds, in their own unique way, serve to immortalize that which we might have otherwise forgotten. Now, is this a call to action? Honestly, I don't really know. At the end of the day, these are all your worlds, and you can do with them whatever you see fit. But at the very least, I'd suggest that at least one more time, you give them another look. Log onto servers that no one's played on for 2 years. Re-download adventure maps that you remember talking to your friends about in middle school. Dig out your old hard drives, phones, and tablets. Boot up your Minecraft client if it still works, and give them one last look. In the moment, you never realize that you're making memories, and years down the line, you may not remember them at all. There's just too much to life for every one of us to recall every last detail that made us who we are today. Things are bound to slip through the cracks. But that's why we leave things behind in the first place, to immortalize for ourselves as well as for others those things that we would otherwise allow to slip away. And knowing this, maybe you can rest just a little easier, knowing that Minecraft will always remember you. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, so this is the part of the video where normally I just play a song for 20 seconds and suggest a video for you to watch. But if you're not going anywhere, you're not in any major hurry, stay for a minute or two and I'll talk to you about a few things. So it's been a while. It's been a really long time. I think it's been about 3 months since the previous video. This came out way later than it was supposed to. I think this might actually be the longest break that I've taken in between 2 videos. And I wish I could say that all of that was spent working on this, but that is unfortunately not true. This is, I think, maybe like the biggest project I've ever done, but that's definitely not the reason that it took 3 months. To be entirely honest with you guys, I have just been incredibly busy, like really busy. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm taking like 17 credits. I'm doing stuff. Ideally, this is something that will only last for a couple more months, and then I'll be free and I'll be able to continue uploading at normal pace. In fact, things are actually slightly easing up, so you can expect, like, in the run-up to the summer, I'll be uploading at least 1 or 2 more videos. Watch me completely fuck that up and, like, not do anything. Yeah, we'll see. I guess I can't tell the future. Yeah, that's basically the status of the channel. I'm not dead. I'm not quitting. I'm just slow, as I always kind of have been. But you know, it's inconsistent. In the meantime, I released an album. If you guys are by chance interested in electronic music or experimental shit, drum and bass, you know, anything in that kind of domain, feel free to go check it out. I uploaded a video for it, put it up on Bandcamp. You can, if you want a code, I'll give you a free code. You can download it. And it should be on Spotify. If Route Note stops being a little bitch and actually like lets me put it up, it will be there soon. So that's something interesting and pretty unrelated to the topic of this video, but just felt like I should point it out. For those of you who are wondering, the fishing shack as shown here was indeed destroyed about month and a half after I started using it. I checked back up on it in late February, and it was completely blown to shit. There was like nothing remaining of it. And you know, that's par for the course. I was expecting it. It actually took longer than I thought it would. They destroyed all my books, my enchanting table, and my backup fishing rods, which I was a little bummed about, but you know, you can't control when these things happen. They just happen. So I'm moving on. I'm finding another base that's hopefully not like 8,000 blocks from spawn. That's probably going to be a good idea. And yeah, I think that's just about everything I have to tell you guys. I appreciate your patience so much. I'm really, really glad for those of you who have stuck around and haven't just jumped ship, because I took 6 millennia to produce a 50-minute video. I really appreciate all of you, and I hope you'll stick around for more stuff in the future. I know I say that every single damn time, but it's true. It's just as true now as it was before. So with that being said, I am going to go to bed because I'm very tired, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a great night.